Everybody, and thank you all for coming this afternoon, or this evening, should I say. My name's Cllr Hamilton, and I'm the local councillor for the Holyhead ward. Now, this is our second remote ward forum meeting. Because of COVID-19, unfortunately, we haven't been able to hold the usual typical ward meetings that we have in the ward. And because I am always very keen to hear what residents are saying, we set up the initial ward meeting in June, but unfortunately, due to technical problems, we just could not get a lot of the residents on to get into the meeting. So I've decided to do a second meeting today, and I want to thank you all for coming. We're recording this meeting for subsequent advertising, so we'll be putting it online so people can listen to what was being said today. Finally, what I'm asking of everybody is, we have a chat box, and you should have a chat function on your system. All I'm asking you to do is, if you want to make any comments or any questions, put it into the chat box. But if you want to say something, can you raise in the participants box? If you go into it's got a participants box. In the participants box, it's got raise hands. If you just raise your hands in the participants box, I will know that you want to speak. Oh no, this is the wrong system. There is a raise hands actually on the dash. So if you want to raise your hands to say you want to speak, that will be the easiest way. Otherwise, put it into the chat function that you want to speak, and I will bring you in with any questions you may have. If you don't want to go on camera, just write the question in the chat function. So if you want to speak and I call you in, can you put your camera on, put your sound on, and ask your question? Then the presenters will respond to whatever the question you've asked. We're going to have to be really disciplined today because we're expecting over 60 people and we've only got an hour and a half, and we've got quite a lot of guests. So what I'm going to do is, we've got Amira from Public Health, we've got Justin Ilya from the bin service, we've got Khalid Mahmood, who is the MP for Barr, we've got Dominic McGrath, who's the police officer in our area, police sergeant. We've got Neil DeCosta, who is helping me today, him and Beverly Edme, to support this meeting. But Neil will be talking about neighbourhood networks. And then we've got Deborah Mosley, who's really kindly at the last minute agreed to speak about HMOs, because I've had a lot of complaints in my inbox regarding HMOs, but there's a lot of work going on around the city. So I'd like to thank all the speakers. But what I'm going to do, because Amira has a young family and she really does need to go quite quickly, I'm going to ask Amira from Public Health to please, she will be the first speaker, to put her camera on and unmute herself. Could she introduce herself and just give us a quick update on COVID? Thank you, Amira. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Good evening, everybody. So, yeah, my name's Amira Sultan. I'm a public health consultant in Justin Barney's team. And I understand that Justin's been to the last ward forum, I think. So, yeah, and just to kind of, I guess, just to give you a very quick overview as to where we're at the moment in terms of COVID, and very happy to take any questions as well. So please don't be shy in coming forward. Just a bit of background, kind of going back, March of 2020 probably feels like about 10 years ago for most people, because so much has happened since then. But it was actually March the 5th that we had our very first case of COVID-19 in Birmingham. And then we saw the case numbers escalate really and peaking around late May, early June. So as of today, there's about 291,000 cases we've had confirmed by lab testing in all of the UK. In Birmingham, our numbers are around the 4,800 mark at the moment. Those are confirmed cases. Obviously, there will be people who don't have symptoms of COVID who will have had it but just haven't realised. And when you kind of compare the kind of, so when you one thing about public health we often do is you can't, we like to look at rates rather than numbers, which allows you to compare across different geographies and different sizes of places. And so our rate, so for every 100,000 people in our city, about 424 of them have had COVID. So that's our kind of our case rate. You know, when you compare that to the rest of England, we see about 383 cases. So we are higher in Birmingham, but that's no surprise given the complexity of our population, and we are one of the most diverse populations in Birmingham, and that will definitely contribute to how COVID is transmitting. But interestingly, if you compare Birmingham to other similar local authorities in terms of makeup, how deprived we are, the kind of people that live there, the size, actually we're not doing as badly as those. So if we're at 424 per 100,000, they're at 503 per 100,000. We are seeing a lot fewer cases now. It's in the single digits. So for Birmingham at the moment, it's about 6 per day. It's about 1 per day for England, and 4 per day for our statistical neighbours, as we call them. So also, I've got a bit of information to share with you about about Holyhead as well. But just before I go on to that, I'm sure some of you might be interested in kind of how COVID is impacting. So, you know, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, you know, COVID-19 has led to a lot of deaths in our country. So we're just under 45,000 at the moment, and it's at around 138 deaths per day. In Birmingham, if you look at our death certificates and what they're saying about COVID deaths, so up until the 3rd of July, there was a bit of a lag. I know we're on the 15th now. I had to just think then for a minute. So it's a few days out of date, but it just takes time for the death certification to catch up. So that's around the 1,200 mark, so 1,166 to be complete, accurate. So in terms of the ward of Holyhead, we have started to get some data at a smaller sub-city level. Now, the way in which we get this data is not ward by ward levels, and that's because our ward boundaries they can be set by the local authority. So what we tend to have is these areas called middle super output areas, and there's actually 2 of those that make up the ward of Holyhead. But I would say that if you put those 2 areas together, it's bigger than this ward specifically. So the number of cases we've seen recorded in this ward is 73 at the moment. Just to give you a bit of an idea of scale. And it's also interesting, obviously, in terms of kind of understanding those numbers. One of the things we know we get a lot of COVID of is in care homes. So any of our wards where, especially kind of Erdington Way as well, we have a huge number of care homes actually in that area, and that generally leads to high numbers of deaths there, and also kind of higher cases, definitely. Just in terms of how we're kind of dealing with COVID at the moment, you know, our DPH has acted really quickly in terms of turning the entire public health team into a COVID response team. So my day job before COVID was all about green spaces, and Cllr Hamilton's heard me kind of whittle on about green spaces before, and now it's more about COVID, my day job. So the way in which we're obvious, and again, a lot of you will have realised and have seen that our relaxation around COVID-19 is happening in terms of what you can do, rather than now the focus on what you can't do. But we're very prepared in public health for that to cause an increase in numbers. So even though I said at the moment the number of cases is low, you've probably heard of Leicester having a local lockdown. We don't want to be Leicester at all. You know, we don't want to be in that position. So we're keeping a very, very close eye on these numbers. You know, with pubs opening, restaurants opening, plans for schools to reopen in September. I think it's fair to say we are expecting our numbers to go up, and because of that, and we've set up kind of 3 main groups really in terms of how we respond. to potential outbreaks. So we've got someone in public health leading all our care homes. I'm actually the lead for education, so anything to do with education, so not just schools, but also early years, universities, colleges, sixth forms, school holiday clubs, and all that comes to me with the support of education. And just so you know, we've had 2 outbreaks in schools so far, but because of the way in which we're working, we've been able to manage that really well and contain it and kind of limit the spread of infection. And then the other group we have is literally everything else. So that's workplaces, it's faith settings, it's homeless shelters, all that kind of, so quite a complex group as well. So yeah, I'm going to stop there if that's okay, Councillor Hamilton, and just pause for any questions.
No, that's fine with me. Does anybody want to raise their hand? Does anybody want to ask any questions? No.
Please,
Neil?
if I could.
Right, who is I? Sorry.
Sorry, I was halfway through typing. My name's Soraya. I'm from Khalid Mahmood MP's office.
Okay, Soraya. Yeah, you can ask your question. Can you put your... Oh, Alison, could you switch your camera off, please? And Soraya, could you put your camera on and ask your question, please?
Can you see me? Is it on?
I can't, but I can hear you. So if you just ask your question.
Ask you was, I know you mentioned that you are the lead in terms of education. Now I know that Khalid's office is waiting for some figures, some data around COVID in care homes. Can you give me a name for your colleague that takes care of that information, please?
Yeah, so it's Rachel Chapman. If you want, Soraya, if you want to pop your email address into this chat, then I can follow that up outside of this. That's not a problem.
No problem. I'll do that right now. Thank you so much, Amira.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Are there any? Thank you for that, Soraya. So if you could just switch your camera off and mute yourself, we'll there's just been another question popped into the chat. As of the 24th of July, people who have got to wear masks, how is this going to be enforced in shops?
Very good question, Nina. So in terms of, yes, so you're absolutely right, 24th of July. So this will be a local decision about who's responsible for enforcing it. So as an example, in terms of my green spaces world, I've been part of our environmental cell, and we've talked about social distancing. How do you enforce social distancing? And that's been a combination of both the police and the park service working together. So this again will be around working with our team in neighbourhoods, most likely, as well as inclusive growth, probably, who've got a responsibility around kind of the economy, and also the police. But I think we have to be really realistic. I think that the shops are going to have to take some real responsibility about enforcing that, because I believe there is a fine associated by not wearing a mask in a shop. And so we'll be having those conversations with our shops to be able to see what plan they've got in place around enforcement as well. Birmingham it's a huge. I don't have to tell any of you this because you live in Birmingham, just like I do. I've grown up here. It's a huge city, and it's getting bigger. But I think you raise a really important point. And what I would say is, where you feel comfortable, it's to be able to, if you see people not wearing a mask, again, if you feel comfortable to be able to do that, is to challenge them. I think a lot of this is going to be around peer pressure as well. When we think about behaviour change, if you think back to, when was it? Oh my gosh, 13 years ago, we had the smoking ban enforced in this country. It's a long, long time ago, and there was a huge concern about how are we going to get people to just not smoke in a pub or smoke in a restaurant. And a lot of that was down to the fact that those establishments, they took responsibility to make sure it was enforced, but also, over time, it's changed. And I think we're going to have to go through that process with this as well.
Right, Amira, we've got one last question, but I don't think you really need to answer this. Javid Iqbal, he said, regarding wearing masks in shops, Asda are selling packs of 10 for £9, which is a rip-off. If these are made mandatory, is the government or city council distributing free masks? I can answer that in one word: no, we will not be distributing free masks. What they've said is, if people don't wear masks as of the 24th, the police will have a responsibility to fine people of, I think it'll be £100. I personally don't think the police have the time to enact that. So I absolutely agree with Amira that we are going to have to police it as a society ourselves. And I do think a lot of people now, the confusion is going and there's a specific decision made and it's now mandatory. I think it will actually be better because people will know they've got to wear it, and they'll either make stuff or they will put scarves on or whatever it may be. I think the confusion was half of the problem. And finally, remember that non-medical face coverings are also acceptable. So that's from Neil to Javid, but I think it would help everybody else who's on this call. So on that note, Amira, thank you very much. And I'm going to let you go because we've got a lot to get through today. And just thank you for being here. Okay.
Okay.
Good night then.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks,
Take
Amira.
care.
All the best.
Take care, and thank you so much. The second person, if he's on the call yet, is Justin Ilya, the bins. Justin, are you here? Is he here, Bev?
Hi, Councillor. No, I can't see Justin.
Okay,
no,
one second. Well, let's move straight across to Khalid. Khalid, was it Samira? Are you speaking for Khalid?
It's Soraya.
Soraya.
I'm just taking notes at the moment. I mean, he did say he may be able to join us. He's in another meeting, so he may join us in about 20 minutes.
What I'll do is I'll move straight on because we have a lot to cover today. So I'm going to move straight on to Neil. Neil, can you just do a few minutes about the neighbourhood networks and where we're at in Barr?
I certainly will. Yeah, hi there. I certainly will, Councillor Hamilton. And what I'm going to do, which might help, is I've just produced some slides, which may help. So hopefully I'll be able to share this with you. Just bear with me one moment. Okay, so hopefully everybody should be able to see that slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Neil DaCosta, for those of you that don't know me. Hopefully most of you residents and stakeholders do. So I work in the City Council's Neighbourhood Development and Support Unit. But in addition to that, I'm the lead facilitator for Barr Neighbourhood Network Scheme. And I just want to share with you a little bit of information in regards to Barr Neighbourhood Network Scheme. And in addition to that, what I'd like to highlight is some of the emergency responses that a lot of the community organisations, local volunteers and faith groups have been doing since the unfortunate occurrence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in terms of neighbourhood network schemes, this is an initiative that's funded by Adult Social Care as part of their Prevention First agenda and their new operating model. This sits within Councillor Hamilton's cabinet portfolio, actually. And the reason why Adult Social Care decided to look at providing neighbourhood network schemes across the 10 constituencies in Birmingham was that Adult Social Care had to look at a different neighbourhood-based approach to be able to refer older adults into provision within their localities. So to give you an example of that, we have a team of social workers that work locally within our constituency, and the social workers, they now have a localized role within communities. So they're working more closely with stakeholders and also other council departments in order to refer people, older adults, into provision within their neighbourhoods, because those of you within communities know that there are lots of voluntary community, faith groups, organisations providing a range of activities locally, which people already interact with and get involved with, and they can interact with and get involved with. But in terms of how they were connected in the communities, it wasn't as good as it could be. So it's all about older people and connecting people with provision within their neighbourhoods. So moving on then to the the second bullet, as I've explained, it was about bringing together the voluntary community and social enterprise and faith sectors within the ward, and I'll bring it right down to Holyhead ward. And I know that there are people on this call at the present moment in time that are either part of community groups, that are either volunteers, or they're connected to faith organisations and do some fantastic work within local communities. In Perry Barr, our neighbourhood network scheme has been running for about 1 year and 9 months. And as I explained to you before, across the City Council, there are now 10 neighbourhood network schemes within the 10 constituencies of Birmingham. So the Perry Barr neighbourhood network scheme is only one of them. Now, over that period of time, what we've been able to do is to create an asset map, and assets are organisations, individuals, and faith organisations that are providing activities for members of the community that older adults can be referred into. And what we've also done, we've actually had some small grants and capacity building funding that we've been able to support a lot of the activities within these groups, to build their provision. And we've now got a really good across the city list of assets, organisations, groups that are really providing some fantastic opportunities within local communities. The networking is really important, and also the supporting of a lot of these groups. And there are people on the call, I'm not going to embarrass them, that I know that their groups have benefited in terms of some of the provision that's been provided. So what I'd like to do is to just explain how the neighbourhood network scheme has been impacted within Perry Barr because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and some of the fantastic responses that have come from the community, particularly in Holyhead ward. So the pandemic, obviously, and the lockdown hit in March. And what then happened, people just got out there and supported from a neighbourhood perspective, their neighbours, their communities, and they did that in a number of ways. A lot of the faith organisations, community and voluntary sector organisations, they started providing food, befriending services, collecting prescriptions, and doing lots of things. And what we did as a neighbourhood network scheme, we had some emergency support grants that we were able to support some of the organisations across the constituency in terms of providing their emergency responses. And it's been absolutely phenomenal, to the point, and Cllr Hamilton will be able to to support this, because Cllr Hamilton and myself have been involved in the emergency response. What's happened is hundreds of people across the ward, but in terms of the constituency, thousands of people have received support, whether it be food support, whether it be, as I say, shopping provision, volunteering provision. It's been a fantastic, amazing support. And right across the city, under an umbrella organisation called BVSC, and there's been a coordinated approach in terms of COVID-19 to respond to some of the real need that exists within our communities. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I can provide you with some more details and information in terms of some of the organisations that have been involved in that. And what I would like to say is that there are a number of organisations that are not part of the Neighbourhood Network scheme, and also some residents that have just, provided an amazing response that we haven't captured, but I know that it's ongoing. Where we are at the present moment in time is the fact that obviously government restrictions and lockdown restrictions are being lifted. So what we're looking at is what we need to do in terms of transitioning out of the pandemic, although it's still here. We still have to follow the guidance that's being issued by the government and public health, etc. But nevertheless, as the lockdown is eased, we still will have to make sure that we assist and help organisations moving forward in terms of how they conduct and support citizens. So, I'm very, very keen to find out some of the issues that you're finding, whether it be as a volunteer or as being part of a community organisation, a faith organisation, or what have you, because there have been numerous kind of grant funding opportunities and other types of support that is available, for groups, if you like, that and also for individuals that we capture within Barr in a bulletin, which we send out on a bi-weekly basis. So again, I'm going to provide you with more details because we can send all that information out to you. But it's really important for us to know what we need to be doing, not just as a council, but also, locally within wards and what have you, to support citizens as best we can. It's really important. And also, I think that Cllr Hamilton, as well as myself, would like to know about and highlight some of the individuals and some of the organisations that I may not know of, in terms of highlighting the fantastic response that they've made, really, because I really do think that needs to be recognised. And in terms of what's required going forward in these uncertain times, we really, really do need to be able to support that as best we can within our resources. So on that note, I'm just putting this up, and Bev, who's supporting us, can happily send my slides through to yourself as well if you're interested. But there is a website in terms of Neighbourhood Network schemes, and you can see that there. There is a bulletin which I mentioned, and there's lots of advice for individuals, for organisations, and also in terms of partners as well, because partners such as West Midlands Fire Service are doing some fantastic work and providing some fantastic support, as are West Midlands Police, that are really stretched at the minute in terms of their responsibilities. But there's a lot going on with partners, so I think the bulletin captures a lot of that, so we can make sure that you have that, and we update it, as I say, on a regular basis. And then my contact details are there, as are my colleagues' contact details, Michael Winter, that also supports Barr Neighbourhood Network scheme. So I've kept it brief. I've just spoken about Holyhead, but as I say, I'm quite happy to provide anybody with any further information, and also to answer any immediate questions that come to mind. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you for that, Neil. Can I just say that I can't thank the residents of Holyhead enough. We had 3 food banks set up in and around Holyhead, because at the start of this crisis, we only had 2 very part-time food banks. We had 3 food banks set up in and around the ward. We had individuals delivering food, and we had other groups coming together and feeding the local community. So in Holyhead itself, I was just humbled at how people came together, from the Gurdwara to the mosque. We had things going on at the churches. We had things going on at Holyhead School. Answorth Association of Schools were working with some of the residents in the ward to ensure people got fed. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And also the work done by a number of you just to check on your neighbours. and lots of that was going on just to make sure people were all right in the local neighbourhood. And because some of you were a bit worried about me, you'd send emails asking, how are you, councillor, which I really appreciated, because trust me, it has been one of the most stressful times of my life. But I'm going to bring Nina in, because I think Nina asked quite a good question. So Nina, could you put your camera on and your and unmute yourself and ask the question, please? Nina? Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll ask the question. Nina?
Hello.
Yeah, could you ask your question, please, Nina? Nina, you need to unmute. Nina, unmute. Okay, I'll ask the question for you, Nina. Nina asked, how are we going to
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes. Can you ask the question, please, Nina?
Yeah. In April, when we all went into this situation, it felt like there's a lot of people that probably didn't have their benefits sorted out that occurred in one go, and there was a lot of things going on where families were really having a lot of problems with food and things like that, because there was, I'd just like to know how are we going to plan just in case they are saying that it's going to happen again. So what's the planning for future, that we'd actually prepared better, that we can actually make sure that nobody's without any food or support that they need? That's my question.
Thank you, Nina. Neil, are you able to answer that at all?
Yeah, well, I can partly answer that, Nina.
Sorry, Neil. Nina, can you switch your camera off, please? There's something about wristbands on this system. Carry on.
Thank you very much indeed. Nina, nice to see you and to hear from you. Just to say that it's a really good point that you make, i.e. what plans are being made, because obviously there's still need out there. And, you know, just in case there is a second spike. So within the council, obviously right across our departments that have been impacted, what they're doing, they are looking at what issues have arisen and where the need still is still is prevalent. And what they're also doing as well is actually putting in place plans just in case there is a second spike, as are all statutory service providers as well. Now, from an emergency response point of view, you know, we're aware that there is going to be an ongoing need from a neighbourhood network point of view, and also in terms of BVSE and other organisations that have a wider brief. So, you know, there's planning going on there. Personally, from a Barr Neighbourhood Network scheme point of view, with the grants that we've got left, this is why I was saying it's really important to find out, you know, what need still exists, you know, because what we want to do is to make sure that we allocate our funding as best we can. And also some of the organisations that are providing emergency responses, what we'd like to do is for some of that to continue, or for them to put in place preparations just in case they need to provide again. But this is a difficult, unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in. So, you know, we can't give you all of the answers, and Councillor Hamilton will have something to say in regards to adult social care, but we won't have all of the answers. But please be rest assured that we are looking at the impact, and we are putting plans in place to, as best as we can, deal with the need out there.
And can I just add to that across the city, because we are actually in a recovery space at the moment, but many people do expect us to go into a second wave. So the council at the moment is also finalising their plans in case we go into a second lockdown. Because please remember, if we go into a second lockdown in Birmingham, it will be Birmingham. It won't be nationally, because the government has now put these boards in place, and they're saying that local areas need to manage their outbreak. So if our numbers go past a certain level, I think it's something like just over 100, 130 cases, what they will do, or if they find any outbreaks that are bigger than 1 or 2, what the government will then do is take the decision whether or not they shut Birmingham down the way they have with Leicester. There are a number of areas in the country that have got like their classed as hotspots at the moment, but they're not shut down. So we expect with the flu season, with the issues around flu and other things, that we could be in a second spike around October, November, but hopefully not. But plans are in place, as Neil has said, to ensure that we not only manage it on a ward level, constituency level, but also on a citywide level. Plans are very much in place. And we're also looking at that piece where we're working with partners across the system, like the police, like the fire service, like the health service, to ensure that we're working as a team. To be honest, I've been exhausted, but I wouldn't want to be the police at this time, because I think it must have been hell for them. But we'll have Dom on later and he'll tell us how it's been. And on that note, Neil, can I thank you for speaking this afternoon? There are no hands up and no one has put anything in the box that they want to say anything else. So what I'm going to do, we've got a lovely young lady that at the last minute, she said she would speak, and it's Deborah Mosley, and she is dealing with HMOs. And Dom, I know that you're there, but I needed Deborah to speak first, because that will help you when you come on board. So Deborah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Right, can I ask you to, if you've got it, to put your camera on and unmute yourself, and you've got 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, Councillor Hamilton, and hello everyone. Unfortunately, I haven't got a camera. I haven't got the most up-to-date technology, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm saying. I'm Deborah Mosley. I'm the Senior Service Manager in the private rented service. And primarily what we do is making sure that housing standards in the private rented service is up to a particular criteria as set out by the Housing Act 2004. I know that's a mouthful. Our team is made up primarily of 3 teams. There's a private tenancy unit which deals with private tenancy relations. So we'll deal with things like illegal evictions or harassment. We then also got the empty property team, which deals with bringing empty properties back into use, and we need that for twofold reasons. One, because obviously they're called this be a blight or health and safety issue for the local residents, but also we have a homeless crisis, and having those properties back into use and with families in them would be of great benefit to the city, and it's particularly the households in them. And then we also deal with HMO licensing. Now, the Act particularly sets out what properties can be licensed, and the criteria is a property is considered to be an HMO for licensable purposes if it's got 5 or more people live in it who are not related to each other, and those people are sharing bathroom and kitchen facilities. So where that's the case, those properties need to be licensed. The license is for 5 years. It talks about the number of people who can stay there, the type of management, and how they should be looked after. If we find that the managers or the landlords of the property are not adhering to the license agreement, then we can actually take enforcement action against them. Our motto really in the service is that we try to educate, encourage, and then if that doesn't work, then we will enforce. And we do go about doing that. But there is, I know there's a number of concerns that residents in Birmingham have around HMOs, in that not all HMO properties that you see are actually licensable. The legislation excludes certain types of properties. They're sort of educational properties, student accommodation, faith properties, and also registered provider properties. So those landlords who have registered provider status and they're managed, the governance is by the social regulator, which is Homes England, then as a local authority, we have very little powers that we can use to actually ask the managers of those accommodation to bring them up to a certain standard. But having said that, we've seen an increasing amount of organisations move into the city to actually benefit from the exempt accommodation status. Exempt accommodation status comes from the housing benefit regulation because the government, when they brought in the local housing allowance rate, they recognised that there may be some residents who need a form of supported accommodation, which means that would attract perhaps additional repair costs, and certainly it would mean additional support for the residents. So it meant that they could charge more than the local housing allowance rate for a single person. So these registered providers who have exempt accommodation status can charge anything from £60–70, 200 plus a week per property. So it can be seen to be quite lucrative. Our concern is that we currently have at least 1,600 units of exempt accommodation property, of only 1,200 of those that actually have been commissioned by the City Council. And the City Council is not against exempt accommodation providers, but we want them all to come up to a particular standard. So we've been working with the social housing regulator, Homes England, from our chair of our Homes and Neighbourhoods Committee, Councillor Thompson. We've been meeting with them to talk through our concerns and to ask for additional governance for these service areas. On top of that, we've also been trying to work with the providers to encourage them to actually, one, keep their property up to a particular standard, to manage them appropriately, and also to provide particular support to the residents. So we've been working on a charter of rights where the exempt providers will sign up to say, we agree to that criteria that's been set out and stick to it. And also the tenants in that organisation would know what to expect for the type of service they should be provided. That doesn't still give us any more powers to take enforcement if people don't stick to it. But what it would do, it will give us the evidence to approach the home social housing regulator to say, these are all the issues. And in terms of governance, we are actually asking you to take further action against the social housing, the exempt providers. In addition to that, because obviously we pay out quite a lot of money in terms of housing benefit to these exempt providers, there's also been a team set up in our housing benefit team, which is our supported exempt accommodation team, and they will actually review any housing benefit claims where it is considered that landlords of this type of accommodation are not managing them appropriately. And because of the concern as well, and part of the work that we do, we've also been going around and speaking to ward forums such as this to explain the difference between an HMO licensable accommodation and also exempt accommodation. And in the next few months, we were hoping to have what we call a mini conference in the four top constituencies that have the high concentration of exempt accommodation. So again, we can explain and put concerns and talk about how we're progressing the service. One of the gaps that we have is that there's a concern around antisocial behaviour, and unfortunately at the moment there's very limited powers that we have as a local authority to deal with antisocial behaviour, irrespective of whether it's licensable or it's excluded from licensing. So we'll be working with our community service team and also the police going forward to see how we can use the powers and the duties that's within the Antisocial Behaviour and Police Act 2014 to bring that to bear, to try and minimise the troubles of antisocial behaviour in local areas. Is that hello?
I was muted. Sorry about that. Thank you for that, Deborah. That's a really interesting start. Now, I've been a counsellor in and around Answorth for many years, and I can honestly say to you, the HMOs are one of the biggest problems we've got in the ward. Now, the question I wanted to ask you, because no one is at Barr, Nina, who's coming in straight after, is we have a lot of problems with a lot of issues, rubbish, dumping, antisocial behaviour, trying to get it sorted out, and just properties that become very unkempt. So it's as if they become HMOs and they just seem to, the street becomes a bit more run down. You've got people coming in and out. There doesn't seem to, even though you talk about this license, nothing seems to ever be done. How is this monitored, and how are we working with the housing providers and what have you to ensure that they do what they've told us they're going to do, and they don't just rent these things, collect the rent, and aren't doing their job?
Right. In terms of, on our website, we have a list of the providers that have HMO license for property. So you can look on that in the first instance if people are concerned. If it's not on that list, then it's more than likely it is exempt accommodation. So I would suggest that you either email our PRS service at Birmingham. The email is prs@birmingham.gov.uk, so we could identify if it's exempt accommodation or otherwise. Because there's little that we can do, all we are able to do at the time would be to write to the providers and ask them to get the tenants to desist from what they're doing. When it comes to the dumping of rubbish, if it's on the public highway, it would be waste management. If it is still on the provider's property, then it would be our trading standards, our environmental health trading standards. But they would only really be getting involved if it's considered to be a health hazard, where obviously you have attracts vermin and which would then obviously lead to diseases. So that would be the bit that they would be interested in.
Right, thank you for that. Can I bring Dom in? Dominic McGrath, he's a police sergeant that helps me an awful lot with these HMOs. So Dom, would you like to make a point before I bring in a couple of residents? Dom, you're muted, Dom. Unmute yourself. You've got your mute button on. Are you able to unmute him, Bev?
Sorry, Councillor. No, I can't. I've been trying to, but I don't think I can.
One moment, I'll try.
Okay.
That's going to be really bad, because if you can't unmute him, we can't do his bit.
No, it's from Dom's side. Dom,
it's from your side. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Councillor, if Dom takes out his headphones, it should be okay.
Dom, take out your headphones. You should be okay if you do that.
And then unmute.
And then unmute. No, we can't get him unmuted. I'm not sure what will, sorry. Yeah, Could he ring in?
We haven't got the dial-in facility, councillor, so he'll have to speak to you on your mobile. I don't know how we can get that on the screen. Can you ask him to ask his colleague behind him?
Ask his colleague what?
To help him to unmute. I can see somebody moving around at the back.
I don't know. Dom, if you ring me.
Excuse me, Councillor Hamilton.
I've got loudspeaker, so I might be able to put it through offline.
I was going to suggest that, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah. So if you ring me. Ooh. Can you hear me, Dominic?
Hello, Paula.
All right.
Sorry,
no problem.
I could be in and out. I can hear you guys clearly.
Yeah. Can you hear him? Right. Carry on speaking, Dom.
Okay, Paula.
Just got
a couple of questions in relation to the kind of the home service providers. I've got to kind of reiterate the kind of concerns from the residents, really. I mean, I have to kind of deal with these on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to know, if possible, please, from Deborah, the kind of percentages on roads, are they kind of monitored? So, because what I'm finding at the moment is most of certainly these kind of housing providers, there's a large number on individual roads, which pretty much kind of ruins, in my opinion, the kind of road, the long-standing residents, the community feeling. Is that monitored in any way, shape or form? If that makes any sense. And did the housing kind of applicants have to apply? Do they have to kind of apply, and does it have to go through planning applications through the council in order for these kind of registered providers to go through initially?
Right, Deborah, over to you. Yes. Could you answer those questions, please?
Yes. In terms of, one of the questions was, what's the percentage of the properties on the roads, and is it monitored? Historically, it hasn't been, that hasn't happened, but it's something that we're looking forward going forward. There are two things we're doing. We're actually doing a piece of work so that we can identify every residential property in the city and the type of tenure it is, owner occupied to social housing. I don't know how many people are aware, but on the 8th of June, the City Council implemented what they call Article 4. And what Article 4 says is that any property that's looking to be rented and become an HMO, and the definitions that they use is slightly different to us, because the regulations they use is also different to private rented sector. So you're talking about anything that's 2 or more people sharing rented accommodation would be considered to be an HMO. So from the 8th of June, those owners who want to change them into HMO for 3 or 6 people sharing, they actually have to get planning permission. So that's only going forward from the 8th of June. In preparation for that, they did ask all landlords on registered providers to actually declare the small HMOs that they have, and up to the end of May, they'd had 2,500 declarations. So at the moment, the planning team are actually going through those declarations to see, which should be licensable or not, and then they're going to send it to us. They're going to publish all of those HMOs on a list as well. So that should be available on their website later on. So we're working in conjunction for that to happen. So, although having said that, this is not retrospective, so it's only the properties going forward who are coming in for planning application that will make that happen. In working together with planning, in the application when someone asks to be an HMO, to change its use to an HMO. We're also informing them that if it's going to be an HMO that's going to have 5 or more people, they also need to ensure that they have a license. We will have access to that list, and so we will be checking it and obviously informing those landlords that they need a license and ensuring that they do. Does that answer your question?
Right. Dom, do you have any more points before I move on to other residents?
No, it's, I suppose it's just kind of like, it's just a bit of a clarification, because I was always kind of under the impression that somebody would be kind of monitoring. So we've got examples of 6 or 7 HMOs back to back together on certain roads within the ward. And I'm kind of constantly going back to these locations and working with the kind of registered providers. It's a really quick turnaround. So we'll have 1 or 2 residents causing problems within a property. We would go there, we would do, as Deborah said, we would engage, explain and do the encouragement side. They'll get to kind of a breaking point, and it's just constant kind of battle, to be honest. And the long-standing residents in and around Handsworth, they've pretty much just had enough of some of these properties. And due to the number of properties, I mean, if we were going on the closure order, that's all we would do. I think legal services would pretty much would have to kind of employ an extra 20 staff to kind of look at these properties. Yeah. So that's it, really. I mean, as you said, Deborah, thank you. It's just a clarification going forward, which is positive, I think. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, right. Can I just say one more thing in terms of the monitoring? Obviously, we can't change anything about those properties that are already exist as HMOs, but certainly when they're in the planning department, when they're looking to see whether they're grant planning permission, they will be looking at the density of HMOs in a particular area. And if they feel that it's hit that threshold, one of the things they'll be looking at is not approving it as an HMO. They might approve it for something else. And from the wider housing perspective, we as a service are interested in keeping them as family accommodation, because there's a great need for family accommodation in the city.
Right, thank you for that. Deborah, we've got 3 people that have written in the chat box, and I'd like them, if they can, to come in, starting with Nina, then Walter, then Ian. If Ian doesn't want to come in, I'll read out his points so other residents know.
Okay.
So Nina?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Okay. Can you make your point quite quickly, please? Thanks.
Yeah. My point is about the empty properties. Deborah, how does Birmingham City Council get to know about these empty properties? And my understanding is that it takes from 1 to 2 years for something to be sorted out in legislation to get the property back from these people who are house on Stanwell Road probably still hasn't been sorted out. So how do you actually get to know about this property?
So the first question, Deborah, is about empty properties. How do you get to know about them? The second point, Walter, can you come in?
Hi.
Walter?
I've been writing on Walter's computer.
Oh, Claire, can you make your point, please?
Yeah, it's just that we seem to have a lot of HMOs or registered properties or whatever on our road where we are. And it just seems to have been getting worse over the past few months. It's like a marked deterioration. There seems to be obvious drug dealing taking place a lot of the time. I mean, I haven't actually witnessed the drugs passing hands, but it seems to be just getting worse. I've noticed there's street prostitution going on as well, which I haven't noticed on our road before. I mentioned in the chat box, there was a guy, this is a few months ago now, pre-COVID, he was obviously distressed and he was going around knocking on doors and waving a knife around. You know, and since then things just seem to have got worse.
Okay, Claire.
What we can do.
Well, part of that I think Dom can take up when he has his slot, and the other bit, Deborah, it's about properties and people getting worse and just nothing seems to be done. And the third point from Ian. Ian, you don't need to put your camera on, just speak if you can get your unmute button.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Excellent, right. Sorry, the camera's disabled on this laptop. Which question was it in particular? Because my main one is we have a lot of what I call backdoor HMOs, where the properties are exempt from being listed as HMOs because they're operated by registered providers or housing associations. These appear to be completely unregulated, which allow for a number of properties that are effectively HMOs to end up in an area, which then destroys a community, which in our particular area has taken us 2 years to build a strong community. On the properties that are social housing, they're not actually listed on the register of registered providers on the government website. So how does Birmingham Council propose to control these properties in the future and to prevent any more backdoor HMOs in areas?
Right, Deborah, I think you've got quite a few. I've got 2 hands raised, but I can't see who the second hand is. So Neil, can you, one is Dom and he's already spoken. Who's the second hand? Unfortunately, I can't call you in because I don't know who you are. So Deborah, if you could answer those 3 questions, that will be you finished. Those are your last 3 questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, yeah.
Okay, so Nida, the first question you asked was, how do we get to know about empty properties? Well, residents actually write in, email us or telephone us and inform us about them, and we will go investigate. Also, we have a Twitter feed as well where we would let people know what we're doing. And I don't know if you know, recently we were on the television. One of my managers, Matthew Smith, was on the television talking about empty properties and bringing them back into use, which was about the housing scandal. So it was showing that the work that we do. Actually bringing an empty property back into use, bearing in mind that the landlords have a right to that property, it's quite labour intensive, because if we don't know who the landlord is immediately, we have to do a variety of searches to ensure that we get the right person, and also we then try to work with that person to get them to bring them back into use. It's only when all of that fails, then we use our powers and get them brought into the arena of the city council. So it can take quite a while, because we have to make sure that legally we have the right to bring that property back in, because the landlord, we either don't know who the landlord is, or they're refusing to do anything in relation to the property. So eventually we will have to compulsory purchase that order. So that's quite time consuming, which is why it takes such a length of time. The issue why we can't do everyone that's reported to us in such a short space, it's just resources. We think that there are really nearly 8,000 empty properties in the city, but we haven't got the staffing resources at the moment to deal with the majority of them. So we set ourselves a target each year to try and bring those in. The target's around 350 a year. With the resources that we have, and I can say that we actually achieved that target last year. In terms of, Claire, your question around, yes, I know there's lots of HMOs and there's a lot of antisocial behaviour around drug dealing and street prostitutes. Those are criminal activities, and I would have to ask Don to respond to that. We wouldn't be able to do anything around that. But if we find out that those properties are actually exempt providers, they're registered RPs, again, there's very little powers that we have. We could write to the landlord and ask them to do, to actually get the tenants to desist. But if the landlord chooses not to do that, there isn't anything we could do. All we can do is then complain to the housing ombudsman, and they should take it up from there. Or a complaint could go into the housing regulator, which is Homes England, to explain that these are the owners of the property, these are the behaviour that's going on, they don't seem to be meeting the management standard that's required. So what I said earlier on about our chair working with Homes England so that we can beef up the governance, that's continuing, because we do recognise it's a problem. And I would also say that there've been a lot of RPs, private RPs from outside of Birmingham who's been moving into Birmingham, and the work that we're doing is to try and reduce that and minimise that to a certain level. We won't be able to do anything retrospectively. We could only change what's, coming forward. And I think that's the same response to yourself, Ian, in terms of how we propose to control the RPs in future. As I said, we've got Article 4, which will identify properties that want to be HMOs, but the difficulty is that if it's going to be an exempt provider, they also will be exempt from Article 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Deborah, can I thank you for that? You've done a phenomenal job in a short space of time. Neil's put in the box, as the new regulation is not retrospective, how can police and residents report existing HMOs, especially those that are problematic, and once reported, they are then added to the register? Deborah, can you answer that?
Not in the way, because in terms of the register that's being put together, it's about, there's two things. There's about two registers going. There's a register for planning, which will obviously be all the HMOs that they've listed. We are actually putting together a list from the exempt accommodation, and that's via the charter. And so we're collating complaints that people are having, difficulties, so we can actually take that to Homes England and also the Housing Ombudsman. So we're looking at employing some additional staff to help do this work around exempt accommodation. So I would say I would rather come back to you at a later date to see how we can give you that information, because this work is still being, the process is still being worked up.
Well, just to finally end, and Ian had to be the one to do it. So Article 4 is actually of no use as regulatory tools to reduce the negative impact of backdoor HMOs in a neighbourhood. And on that note, I won't add, I won't subtract. I think he makes a valid point, but all we can do is continue to work towards. And to thank you, Deborah, for coming today at such short notice and doing such a fine job. Okay.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And the residents want to thank you also. I'm going to move straight on to Dominic, who is the Answorth, I always say the Answorth Wood police sergeant, but he covers half of my ward, and he always has a lot of knowledge about the other half of my ward, which he doesn't cover. So Dominic, would you like to give just a short report, and so we can get some questions?
Yeah, of course I can. Thank you, Paula. Good evening, everybody. Yes, so I'm Sergeant Roberta Fan, the Handsworth supervisor. So I cover Holyhead ward, and which also encompasses with the Handsworth Wood side as well. So I just wanted to touch on, without going to too much detail, I just want to thank everybody listening, and I'm sure that Paulette, you'll pass the message on to other residents that over the last couple of months, it has been an extremely challenging time for all of us, and especially kind of West Midlands Police. And I thank you for those residents who've pretty much had to kind of hold back on normal, what we call neighbourhood policing. We are coming through a kind of recovery period, so just to give you a kind of a snapshot of the stuff that we've been kind of having to do whilst the initial kind of lockdown was in place. We were kind of being directed by the Home Office. We had a number of critical sites to look after, and that was for different kind of reasons. And they were tiered on tier 1, 2 and 3 as a kind of priority. So at which point then we've had to kind of spread resources out even thinner than what we've got at the moment. Some of those sites have kind of redacted. So Some of those have actually dropped off. So we're returning back to kind of normal policing. With inside of that, obviously, we've had to kind of monitor the shops, the restaurants, the licensed premises, all the religious establishments, and then quickly kind of catch up with all the new legislation with COVID stuff. So we're getting our heads around that at the moment, which is kind of challenging itself because it's kind of always changing. Every day you have to kind of go onto Google, if I'm honest, to kind of find out what's going on next. So it has been challenging. The force perspective on any of these breaches has been kind of the 4 E's approach, which is engage with the community, which is the most important thing, educate them, explain what the kind of legislation means, and encouraged to kind of go home. And I've had hundreds of emails, I've had hundreds of blogs where people were 100% definitely breaching COVID regulations. And the force pretty much nearly come to a standstill with the amount of calls for service that we were getting. So I just want to thank you to you guys and the residents for bearing with us. We are coming through that slightly. We've got some new legislation coming through, not legislation, some changes, i.e. the face masks are coming in slightly late in around masks. And I think, Paulette, you asked the question, how the police are going to monitor the kind of people going into shops and how is it going to be monitored? And it's a very good question. I think that the force Federation representative makes some valid points about that. And it will be pretty much on everybody's goodwill. But that said, if we do have breaches, that's the 4E approach will always be in place. And there's reasons for that. And most of that over the last couple of months is because people are feeling the heat, people have been feeling the tension, not being able to go out, see family members, and they haven't been able to go on as life as expected. So tension was high anyway, and it's a very sensitive situation. So we've had to kind of tread carefully and be on solid ground. I mean, the force's perspective has always been to educate people and only penalty those people who are just taking no for an answer. I don't have any statistics how many people were kind of given fine or fixed penalties, etc. But certainly my team and my residents, 99.9% of the people were kind of law abiding. There's only a section of the community who just thought they could do what they want, and we did hand out several kind of fixed penalty notices. So the next couple of weeks, we'll see easing again with the COVID regulations kind of changing again. And there's no forced kind of direction in regards to the masks in shops at the moment, but that should come out soon. But I could hazard a guess it's going to be down the 4E approach, and then last resort we'd kind of be issuing out tickets. So the last couple of months, that's what we've been kind of focusing on. With that, we've seen some large street parties. We've seen an increase in HMO problems where people have been causing problems to local residents. As Deborah said and Ian said, there has been some brothels. There have been some cannabis factories. There have been some HMOs where they've got 5 or 6 people living inside and they've been causing this kind of no-end of problems. My usual approach for HMO addresses is very simple. We rely on the community to let me know. And Ian and Nina are exceptional. They tell me exactly where the problematic address is in their triangle. And I hope Ian would vouch for the police to say that we're pretty much on it straight away. I agree with Deborah that they're limited what they can do with their powers. But if I get reports of antisocial behaviour, drug taking, brothels, that's my remit. That's what our core role has been, neighbourhood sergeants, and we pretty much get a really quick turnaround. We usually use the kind of ASB closure order and the fact that we can close them down, but that again takes the kind of, we have to work with some of these HMOs, we have to work with these providers, but 9 times out of 10, once there's been a couple of problematic residents inside the properties, we can get a quick turnaround. It only takes 1 or 2 people to upset the apple cart. I know sometimes we are passing the buck, but I'm in charge of not in charge of. I oversee the kind of hostels, HMO properties on my ward, and that's where my responsibilities lie. So I think we had some nice complaints from a resident on Aylesford Road, and it was affecting his family's kind of life and well-being. He was struggling to wake up in the morning. His kids were being kept awake, and that's stuff I won't have that, and I'll do whatever we can to kind of limit that. So I think it was Claire who had some problems in relation to a couple of HMOs. Claire, I don't know if you've phoned myself or emailed myself, but I'd be interested to know the issues that you're having. If there's any questions I can have or assist with, then just please let me know.
Well, Don, while we're waiting, Nina's put in the chat box, Dominic, the car I reported without MOT, you said police have to see the driver driving before anything can be done. Does this mean residents should not report vehicles without MOT on the car?
No. So, yeah, I spoke to Nina about this. No, so the vehicle's got no MOT, but the offence is driving without no MOT, and that has to be seen by a police officer. And there is an action report on that vehicle. So when that vehicle goes past an ANPR camera, it will flag up the action report on there. It's got no MOT, and the officers will. When it flags up, if they're close by, depending on the situation, if there's an officer close by, they will know that vehicle's got no MOT. So it's just a matter of time, Nina, if I'm honest, but we can't do anything in terms of preventative measures. We can knock on somebody's door and say you've got no MOT, but then, there's hundreds of cars around here without no MOT. So all we do in this situation is put an action report on the vehicle. It gets stopped at some point, but we can't prosecute anybody without us seeing that vehicle being driven without that MOT. Hope that helps.
I'm sure it did. Could I then put across Ian's point? He said, yes, our neighbourhood police team are exceptional in their support, and it is greatly appreciated. And Claire has said, many thanks, Dom. How can I contact you about the HMO problems? Are you able to write in the chat box, Dom?
I can give it a go. Can I pass my telephone number over to everybody? Can have it. I've got no issues with that.
Okay.
Whatsoever. Well,
if you put your call, say your telephone number, and Beverly will put it into the chat box.
Okay. 1 second.
Or I can.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get that sorted. So my telephone number is 07 391 01 9003. So that's 0739 101 9003. So Paula, just on that note,
yeah.
Ian Bell, he's the coordinator for the triangle, which
yeah.
is just on the Oxford Road. And I've got to say, I've got to use him as an example because he constantly emails me about issues from the residents. So he will highlight, he highlighted a cannabis factory a few days ago. He highlighted a brothel, and without him and his triangle doing that, we're going to miss all this information out. And within a couple of days, we had a warrant, we cleared out the cannabis factory, likewise with the brothel. I'm struggling to see that a little bit more on the Holyhead side, but I'm asking.
Yeah. Dom, this was going to be my point. The Holyhead side, unfortunately, residents don't seem to want to go that extra step. They will moan, but they're just not doing that extra bit of work to get things done at the moment. And they're brilliant, because I absolutely adore the residents in my ward. But unfortunately, the resources are scarce. And it's got to be that sometimes you've got to do some of the legwork and report things to the police and others. So I have been, the last 3 months have been really hard for me, because I do a lot of my interactions like with talking to people and being on the ward regularly. And I haven't done that as much because basically the city stuff has been ridiculous. And we have had, Dom, the number of brothels, places that they're having parties at the moment, so people can't sleep. Newcombe Road, Aylesford Road, parts of Regent Road. What exactly do you want people to do? If you just say it now, they will know. Because it's not actually, some of it isn't your issues either, it's the council, because when they try to ring the police say it's environmental health.
Okay, I mean, it is, the way I look at it is, if our long-standing residents, our law-abiding citizens, are asking us for help and assistance in their normal day-to-day life and it's been affected, I will look at that. So for example, you know, with the rubbish, we can do things with noise. Yeah, okay, you have lead agency, but we're talking about people's livelihoods here. We're talking about children inside of properties. It's affecting people's mental health. I have 6 officers at my disposal. No, we can't deal with everything, but if I can help, I will do anything in my power to kind of improve people's lives. My request from the Holyhead ward is very simple. Ian pretty much is the voice, I think, of about 10 to 20 residents in and around the kind of triangle. I know he has meetings. I'm not expecting people to run a meeting. I just need a voice similar to Ian Bell, who would be a point of contact, and then they could forward me that information. And I think that's you at the moment, Cllr Hamilton. I think they tend to go to you before they come to me, which I understand the potential reasons why, that, you know, and I get the reasons, but without a voice in the community, it's hard for me to kind of read people's minds, if that makes sense.
Tom, I have tried to get him to go straight to you. I have,
I know,
but I'm struggling. So I just, you know, we just have to keep at it. Bev has asked if she could come in. Bev.
Thanks, Councillor. Hi, Dom. It's just, can I just double check your phone number, please? Do you mind repeating it again for me?
Yeah, no problem. 1 second, sorry. Let's get it up. So it's 07 391 01 9003.
So 07391 019.
So 101 9003.
101 9003. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dom. Thank you.
No problem. Cheers.
Okay, thank you. Dom, I'm going to have to stop you there unless we've got any more questions. Khalid guessed. I thought Khalid wanted to have a quick. Khalid, do you want? Khalid, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
You said, do you remember you said you wanted to have a chat with Dom this morning?
Yes. I've tried an email, but I think I've got the wrong email for Dom. Basically, I wanted to thank him about helping me set up the constitution, and I've managed to do that. And adding on to the HMOs, I'm delivering a project with the West Midlands Crime Commissioner with the problem arising in HMOs. And somewhere I was thinking I could bring the same project along in the Handsworth area as well, like the highly affected areas. But I've started a smaller project, but I don't know how to expand on it. So it'd be great if I can have a one-to-one with Dom about this matter as well, because it's a big issue that the HMOs are, and I believe that the sport workers, they're not qualified, they're not delivering their sport services to the individuals who are living in certain homes, and it's just the systems being built, and basically they're getting housed in certain areas and not getting the relevant support, and the crime and the drug abuse and alcohol abuse and all that is carrying on, and it's not rectifying the problem, and we definitely need to work on that. And yeah, that's about it, Paulette. Yeah.
Can I just say, Khalid, Dom's public phone number is in the box, 0739 101 9003, and perhaps you might want to drop him a text or something.
Yeah, and definite. And I was just would like to add on about the Rookery Road, Paulette. I don't know whether you've seen my messages on the Handsworth Neighbourhood Watch. I do quite a lot of updates with some of the media channels as well. We do blogging on there. It's, I don't know whether you've seen like around within that mile, half mile, we're getting constant knife crime, shootings, violent crimes are on the rise. And I was thinking if there's other organizations we can approach, maybe who could come and deliver projects in that area to tackle like the current issues we have with the youths. I know we've got COVID-19, but maybe we can, I don't know which sort of organizations to get in touch with. I'm delivering certain projects, but there must be many other agencies and other organizations who we can, or you can link us with to deliver projects to tackle these issues.
Right, Dan, can I let you have the last word on that one? Then I'm going to have to let both of you go dark, as they'd say, while I finish the meeting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's yeah. I think what we've been doing recently is obviously we've been on the ground. We've been working with the youth services as well, but with the COVID situation at the moment, it's been hard. They've got plans to use outreach teams. I've got a couple of contacts within Birmingham City Council who are in over Newtown tonight, but they're kind of sharing across kind of constituencies. But yeah, I'll be more than happy to speak to you, Khalid, if you've got some ideas. Partnerships are teams, they've got a range of activities and events and things, but everything's been static at the moment. But yes, moving forward, Khalid, more than happy to discuss and kind of work with you forward, no problem.
Great stuff. Thank you both. And Don, thank you so much. I know it was a few technical issues, but you pulled it out the bag. So
sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. And Khalid, can you just switch your put your mute button on and take your camera off? It's just the bandwidth.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Paula, thank you very much.
That's okay. We're in the last 5 minutes of the meeting, and I know I haven't left much time, but if there's any other business, does anybody have any issues, any other business, anything they want to raise with me? In the ward at the moment, the big issues I've tried to bring to you tonight, which has been the rubbish, HMOs, and the stuff around. We've been having lots of antisocial behavior relating to lots of noise issues and the beginnings of the spread of prostitution in certain parts of the ward. I have had issues people complaining about speeding on certain roads, but as I get the queries, I've been trying to deal with them as I get them. So, you know, it would be nice if you also contact the police and others, but if you can't, don't stop sending in your queries. Just send them to me, paulette.hamilton@birmingham.gov.uk, and I promise you I will deal with any queries you may have. And on here it says, repeat question from above. My question, this is from Javid, my question is for the waste bin rep. I am from Elsford Road. I am from Elsford Road. The pavements are littered with dog poo. The dog owners have just not cleaned up after them. The street cleaner doesn't clean it. So who is supposed to clean the pavements? Well, to be honest, if you know, Javid, the address of the householder whose dog is messing, Javid, you know my details. Just get in touch with me, and what I'll do is we have got a small dog team that we can alert to this, and they can speak to the owner to clean that up. The mess that's on the street already, unless Neil knows, I thought the bin service would clean it up, but I don't know. They do normally do it, so I'm a bit worried about that. Also, the beds that were at the bottom of Elsford Road, I saw them on Saturday. I did report them all. They have been reported to me, but I haven't been up the street in the last couple of days. So it'd be interesting to find out if all those beds, it was about 6 or 8 beds, have gone. That would be interesting to know on that street. We have had a lot of dumping in the ward. It's been ridiculous, to be honest. But can I say that some of the residents have been phenomenal at helping us to just identify the spots. And Justin normally is really good at getting his officers to clean it up. I'm not sure why Justin's not here tonight, but I just want to say to everybody that did manage to get on, did manage to speak, thank you very much. Thank you for your input, and thank you for just making Holyhead ward, in my opinion, one of the best wards in the city. So we will do this all again in the autumn. I can't remember the next date, but we will get it out to all of those who were registered for tonight, and any other email addresses we've got. And I will also spread the word nearer the time. So, and until we can start doing face-to-face, this is how we will do it. But I promise you, we will have regular meetings. Thank you all very much. And it says here, many thanks also to residents for their vigilance in reporting fly tipping and dumping. I agree with that also. Thank you all very much. And at this point, I'm going to say good night. So bless you all. Thank you.